That afternoon, the Utah sun sank behind the pines, leaving a soft golden glow over Bear Lake. A light breeze swept across the long picnic tables covered in red and white checkered cloths, and the clinking of glassware filled the air with that familiar sound of family gatherings. I stood in the corner of the yard, holding a glass of wine I hadn't even tasted yet, looking around at all the familiar faces that somehow felt distant. In front of me stood my mother, Helen Bennett, in her cream linen dress, her curls perfectly styled. She raised a glass of white wine, the last sunlight bouncing off the liquid like shattered mirrors. Her smile was gentle, her voice clear and full of pride as she turned toward my sister. "This," she said, "is the daughter who's always loved and supported this family, who always knows how to care for everyone." Laughter and cheers followed. The whole yard seemed to brighten with Sophie's smile, my sister, in her flowing white dress, her blonde hair loose, her warm grin softening even the hardest heart. Then my mother turned toward me. Her eyes weren't angry, not even cold. Just a brief glance and a thin smile, sharp as a thread. "And this one," she said, her tone flat, like she was reading off a grocery list, "has never helped with anything." Everything froze. The sound, the laughter, the chatter all gone. No one spoke. No one corrected her. Only the clinking of ice against glass and the wind brushing through the pine branches. I swallowed hard, my fingers tightening around the stem of the glass until my knuckles turned white. In that moment, I knew exactly what had happened. I'd just been erased from my own family story. No shouting, no tears, just a silence, so heavy I could hear my heartbeat skip. And in the breeze drifting over the lake, I could almost hear a whisper. "This is the moment there's no turning back." After that party, the first thing I remember is the smell of morning coffee in my little apartment in downtown Denver, that light, bitter scent with a touch of cold dryness, just like the life I chose. I lived alone in a 2-bedroom place on the 5th floor of an old building near Cheeseman Park. Every morning, I'd open the window and let the mountain breeze from the Rockies sweep in cold enough that I'd have to wrap my hands around my coffee cup just to keep them warm. The apartment wasn't big, but it was so neat you'd never guess I once supported a whole family with these same hands. From the living room, I could see the snowy peaks in the distance, and when winter came, the sunlight bouncing off the glass made everything look like it was coated in silver dust. In Denver, people like to say, if you don't like the weather, just wait 5 minutes. Maybe that's how I lived too, always waiting for things to change, even when they never really did. I worked at a mid-sized auditing firm in the Lodo business district. Nothing glamorous. The office was full of fluorescent lights, the smell of paper and printer ink. I usually came in early, stayed late, making sure every number lined up perfectly. People called me the reliable one. But reliable is just another way of saying the one who never complains. That's how I was with my family too. For 9 years, I quietly paid the mortgage on the old house in Aurora, covered the utilities, my dad's health insurance, and even Sophie's tuition, my sister, who was always finding herself through new classes, candle making, yoga, photography, and then moving back home again. No one asked me to. They just accepted. And for some reason, I kept sending money, as if it were the most natural thing to do. Sometimes I wondered if I did it out of love, or just out of fear of being cut off from whatever was left of family. I still remember the last time my mom called. Her voice was calm, like it was nothing big. "Sweetie, your dad needs an MRI. The insurance hasn't renewed yet, can you check on that for me?" And I answered like I always did, "Sure. Don't worry about it." And just like that, once again, I became the responsible one, the silent backbone no one ever mentions. Evenings in Denver were quiet. I liked sitting by the window, watching the car lights drift along Colfax Avenue like soft, glowing trails. Everyone in the city was busy, but not many were lonely. I was different. My loneliness didn't come from being alone. It came from always having to hide the things that hurt. I used to think if I kept trying long enough, maybe one day they'd look back and understand that not everyone needs applause. Sometimes you just want to be seen, to be remembered as someone who was there. But I was wrong, because in my family, silence was always mistaken for indifference, and kindness, if left unspoken, was always forgotten. If someone asked me, "What's your family like?" I wouldn't know where to start. Because to outsiders, the Bennetts look like a perfect Colorado postcard. A two-story wooden house with a white fence, an open gate, and a bed of yellow daisies by the porch. But inside, everything is divided neatly like a balance sheet: who's loved, who's understood, and who pays the price. My mom, Helen Bennett, is a woman who lives to be admired. She'd rather tell stories than listen to them. Her kitchen always smells like apple pie, with old country music playing in the background, as if that could cover up the cracks beneath. She used to teach literature at the local high school, and maybe that's why she loves clear roles in her story. My dad's the gentle husband, Sophie's the shining daughter, and me, I'm just the footnote at the bottom of the page. I still remember one afternoon last year when I came home for a visit. Our neighbor, Mrs. Martha, leaned over the fence and said to my mom, "That girl's pure sunshine. Always smiling. Always spreading good energy." My mom nodded proudly. "Yes, she has such a beautiful heart." Then she turned to me with a polite smile, like she was trying to balance the scales. "And Laura, she's very practical. Always knows how to plan things out." It sounded harmless, but to me, it felt like a dividing line. In this family, they needed Sophie's emotions, but they needed my calculations to keep things running. My dad, Frank Bennett, is quiet and kind of man who avoids conflict at any cost. Every morning, he'd sit on the porch with his coffee and newspaper, nodding at everything my mom said, big or small. When I was little, anytime tension rose, he'd tell me, "Don't upset your mother. Peace in the house matters more than who's right or wrong." That line stuck with me. It became the reason I learned to stay silent, even when I was hurting. And Sophie, my little sister, she's the kind of person everyone loves instantly. She's got that soft, creamy voice, the kind of eyes that smile, and this strange faith that the universe will take care of things. She studied acting, then yoga, then candle design, and eventually turned my parents' garage into a small shop. When she sold her first few candles, Mom told the whole neighborhood, calling it a dream being lit. I wasn't jealous. At least, I don't think I was. I just felt tired. Because every time something went wrong, I was the one who stepped in, fixed it, paid for it, and quietly disappeared, like I'd never been there. Once, Sophie called me in the middle of the night, her voice trembling. "Hey, I ran out of money. A customer's picking up tomorrow, and I don't have the supplies yet. I'll pay you back as soon as I sell them, okay?" I knew she wouldn't, but I still said, "Send me the invoice. I'll take care of it." After hanging up, I just stared at the dark ceiling, listening to cars pass by, each one sounding like another second ticking away from my youth. Over time, I realized there are two kinds of love in my family, the kind that's spoken out loud and the kind that's paid for with bills. One night at dinner, my mom said, "Sophie really lives life. Laura's too careful. You should learn to open up more, stop working so much." I smiled. But in my head, I was asking, if I stop working, who's going to keep this house from falling apart? Looking back, I see now that in all of Mom's stories, I was never the main character. Not because I wasn't good enough, but because I didn't make people feel comfortable. I wasn't bright or dreamy or someone who spread positive energy. I was just the one who paid the bills on time. And maybe, in my mother's story, that was never enough to be called love. A week before the family gathering in Utah, I stood in front of a little gift shop on Larimer Street, staring at a card that said, "For the family that means everything." I hesitated for a moment, then bought it along with a cream-colored envelope. Inside the envelope, I placed a dinner gift card for Le Jardin, the restaurant with the purple vine-covered windows and warm golden lights. It was the place my mom once said, "One day we'll go there." But somehow, that one day never came. I made the reservation 3 weeks in advance, asked for the table by the window, and told them to set a small vase of lavender, her favorite flower. I wasn't rich, but I wanted to give them a nice evening, one without anyone worrying about the bill. Maybe I still believed that a genuine gesture could mend the cracks people don't talk about. In my head, I pictured us all sitting together, candles flickering, my mom's face soft in the light, my dad smiling, Sophie telling stories that made everyone laugh. I thought, maybe this time, she'd look at me differently, like a mother finally realizing that the quiet one had also helped hold the family together. That morning, I packed light, a navy blue dress, a pair of flats, and the envelope with a gift card. As I hit the road, the morning sun slid down the mountain ridges, catching on my windshield until I had to squint. I drove for more than 6 hours from Denver to Bear Lake, winding through the roads of Wyoming, where the wind blew so hard it bent the trees sideways. When I got close, I saw an old wooden sign painted in white. "Welcome, Bennett family." I laughed to myself. It felt like a welcome meant for someone else. But still, it felt nice to be called by name. Deep down, I held on to a small hope that maybe this year would be different. That maybe, under the golden lights and the Utah pines, I wouldn't be the one standing on the edge of the photo anymore. Even if that hope was fragile, I clung to it the way you grip the steering wheel tight when the wind gets rough, believing that if you just hold on long enough, everything might be okay. That afternoon, the resort by Bear Lake was almost too beautiful to believe. The late sunlight poured through the tall pines, scattering over the water like shards of glass. The air carried the mix of grilled meat, sweet bread, and burning wood, that familiar scent of family gatherings in the Pacific Northwest. Nearly 50 people, relatives, siblings, friends of friends, filled the long red and white checkered tables. Kids were chasing each other. Bottle caps popped open. Old country music played from a Bluetooth speaker on the porch. It was the kind of noisy comfort that sounds like home. I arrived about 15 minutes late. Not because of traffic, I just sat in the car for a while, staring through the windshield at the lawn where a sign read, "Welcome, Bennett family." The words looked simple, but to me, they felt heavy, like a boundary line I wasn't sure I could cross. I took a deep breath, straightened my dress, and stepped out. Sophie was already there, of course, right in the center of it all. She wore a white dress, her blonde hair loose, her hands moving gracefully as she talked. Next to her was my mom, Helen, smiling bright and clutching her wine glass like it was part of her. When I walked up to the table, she glanced at me once, then turned away, continuing her chat with a cousin. I quietly slipped my envelope under my dad's plate. No name, no bow, no explanation. I told myself, just like always, silent but enough. As the sky darkened, the party grew louder. Someone strung up more lights along the porch, that soft yellow glow making everyone's faces look warmer, happier. I was half listening to a distant uncle when I heard the mic crackle. "Hey everyone," Sophie said, her voice sweet and natural. "I wasn't planning to speak, but I have a little surprise for Mom and Dad." The crowd clapped. I saw Mom's eyes light up, like she already knew what was coming. Sophie unwrapped her gift, a large oak-framed collage. Inside were pictures, birthdays, Christmases, a California trip, all with Mom, Dad, and Sophie. I wasn't in any of them. Not cut out, not forgotten. Just never there. Mom held the frame with both hands, the light reflecting off the glass. Her lips pressed together like she was holding back emotion. Then she stood, raised her glass, and said with pride, "This is the daughter who's always loved her family. Always there, always caring, always making everyone feel loved." Applause. Soft os. I stayed quiet. Just when I thought she was done, she turned to me. Her eyes were calm, her tone gentle, like she was adding a footnote to the picture everyone had just admired. "And this one," she said softly, "has never really helped with anything." The air cracked open. A spoon clinked against a plate. Someone gave a nervous laugh, then silence. I could hear my glass tremble in my hand, the liquid inside tapping against the rim. In that moment, it felt like someone had erased my name from a record, clean, final, without hesitation. My whole life, I'd feared being forgotten, but I never imagined it would happen like this, publicly, under the lights, surrounded by people who shared my last name. I didn't speak. No defense. No anger. I just sat there, feeling my heartbeat skip, then skip again. The cold wind from the lake brushed over my shoulders. When the apple pie came out, I stood up. My chair made a soft creak, enough for a few heads to turn. I smiled faintly, stepped back from the table. No one asked where I was going. No one tried to stop me. I walked past the string lights, past the smell of grilled meat, and the music still playing like nothing had happened. The wind swept through the pines, carrying the faint sound of glasses clinking behind me. I didn't look back. I knew if I did, I'd only see my reflection in their eyes, someone who didn't belong in her own family. When I opened the car door, the sky over the lake had turned a smoky shade of blue-gray. Long streaks of clouds drifted slowly over the pine ridges. I sat in the driver's seat, hands still trembling. The air carried a faint scent of barbecue and burning wood from the party behind me, but it already felt distant, like a memory that belonged to someone else. I started the engine. The rough hum echoed through the quiet air. Before leaving, I glanced in the rear-view mirror. The string lights still flickered along the porch. Figures moved in and out of the glow, laughing, talking. No one noticed that someone had just slipped out of the picture. I drove down the dirt road that wound along the lake, headlights cutting through the trees. The Utah night carried that sharp mountain chill, the kind that seeps through the cracks and stings your skin like 1,000 tiny needles. I turned up the heat, but the cold inside my chest stayed. No music, no radio, no podcast, just the steady rhythm of the engine and my breath fogging the glass. The road stretched ahead, curving through the dark hills. With every turn, I felt like I was driving through layers of memory, the years of quietly sending money, the times I listened to my mom praise her wonderful daughter, the late nights waiting for email confirmations that another bill had been paid. About 2 hours later, as I crossed out of Utah, a light rain began to fall. Raindrops tapped the windshield in a rhythm that sounded like a clock ticking. My mind went to numbers, a habit I never outgrew. Each expense flashed by like data on a screen. $980 for the mortgage, $120 for gas, $3,000 for mom's hospital bills, $5,700 for Sophie's tuition. All stacked up, an endless line of totals. 9 years. $148,000. Not a single thank you. When I realized I was crying, the tears had already reached my wrist. I let out a small, bitter laugh. Maybe it wasn't the money that hurt, it was knowing how much I'd paid to earn a place they erased with one sentence. By the time the clock hit 1:17 a.m., I pulled into a small gas station off the highway. The sky was dull and pale, the neon sign flickering. I bought a bottle of water, sat in the car for 10 more minutes, and listened to the wind howl through old billboards. That's when the thought came clear, simple, undeniable. I'm going to stop everything. When I got back to Denver, dawn was brushing the tops of the buildings. Soft light spilled through the window, glinting off the kitchen counter. I took off my shoes, set my bag down, and stood there. No lights, no curtains, just the sound of silence filling the room. Then I opened my laptop. My hands moved calmly, almost automatically. I canceled every automatic transfer to my parents, shut down mom's secondary card, ended the gas and electric accounts under my name, changed my bank passwords. Every step was clean, precise, deliberate. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, just because I no longer had a reason to fund a role I'd been erased from. When the screen went dark, I realized my heartbeat had slowed. A strange lightness spread through me, like I'd just lifted off a weight I'd been carrying for years, thinking it was duty. That night, I slept 8 hours straight for the first time in nearly a decade. No dreams. No jolting awake. No texts asking, "Did you send the money yet?" Just silence. But the kind of silence that comes when someone finally finds their freedom. The next morning, Denver was covered in a soft, milky haze. I was standing in the kitchen, holding a glass of cold water, when the doorbell rang. Not hurried, just one long, steady chime. Like whoever was outside knew exactly what they'd come for. I peeked through the curtain. 2 figures stood on the porch. My mother, Helen Bennett, in her familiar beige cardigan, hair slightly loose, makeup lighter than usual. Beside her was my father, Frank, tall, thin, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on the concrete step. They stood there quietly, like guests waiting for permission to enter. I opened the door, but didn't invite them in. Just stood in the doorway, the porch light spilling across the rug at my feet. Mom spoke first. Her voice was softer than usual, stripped of that commanding tone she always had. "Laura, I just want to talk for a minute. I think maybe there's been a misunderstanding." I crossed my arms, leaned against the frame. "We can talk right here." She blinked, hesitated, searching for words. "About the party."
I didn't mean what I said.
"Everyone was watching, I just said something offhand. I didn't think it would hurt you like that." I looked straight at her. "Didn't mean it?" I repeated. "In front of 52 people?" Dad took a small step forward, his voice low. "Sweetheart, we didn't think you'd react that way. Your mom just got emotional. Everyone knows how much you've helped." I cut him off, calm but steady. "If they know, then why didn't anyone say anything?" No one answered. Outside, a bus passed, wind rustling the leaves. I looked at the two people who once were my whole world, now standing there like strangers from down the street. I pulled out my phone and opened a note. The list appeared neat and precise, like every balance sheet I'd ever made. $980 a month for the mortgage, 7 years. $120 for gas. $3,000 for mom's surgery. $11,100 for dad's medications and tests. $5,700 for Sophie's classes. Over $20,000 for emergencies. No one remembers. I read each line, my voice steady, mechanical. When I looked up, Mom's eyes were fixed on the floor tiles. Dad's jaw tightened, gaze turned away. "That," I said, "is what you called not helping." A heavy silence fell. Then Mom exhaled, her voice trembling. "I just misspoke, Laura. You know I didn't mean to hurt you." I smiled, faintly, not bitter, just sad. "One slip of the tongue doesn't erase 9 years, Mom. Unless you actually believe it does." Dad looked like he wanted to speak, but didn't. His hand trembled inside his coat pocket. Maybe he understood too. I took a deep breath, my voice quiet but firm. "I don't need an apology. I just need things to be clear. If what I've done isn't enough to count as being part of this family, then I'll live by that truth. From now on, I'm done paying for my place in someone else's story." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "You can't say that, Laura. Family is forever." I shook my head. "Not when love only lasts as long as someone's willing to pay for it." The words hung there sharp, but bloodless. I closed the door gently. Not a slam, just a soft click, enough to separate two worlds. Behind it, I leaned my forehead against the wood, listening to their footsteps fade down the porch. No crying, no pleading. Just silence, the kind that comes when two people realize they've lost something they thought could never be lost. In the kitchen, sunlight filtered through the blinds, slicing across the counter in thin, bright lines. I watched them quietly, feeling no anger, just a strange, steady peace, like everything had finally balanced out. No more debt. Not in money. Not in love. That afternoon, just as I finished wiping down the kitchen counter, the doorbell rang again. This time, 2 short, firm rings, like whoever was outside believed they had a right to come in. I walked over and peeked through the curtain. It was Sophie. She wore an oversized sweater, her hair tied up messily, a worn tote bag slung over her shoulder. Her face was still pretty, but something in her eyes had changed, like someone who'd just woken up from a long dream. I opened the door without a word. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, dropped her bag on the chair, and turned to me. "You didn't answer my texts. Mom called me 14 times this morning. They're freaking out. The accounts are locked, their cards don't work, the bills aren't paid. What are you doing?" Her voice trembled, not from anger, but from fear. I crossed my arms, leaning against the counter. "I'm just doing what they said was true. Mom said I never helped. Now they get to see what that actually looks like." Sophie stared at me, shaking her head. "You can't just cut them off like that. They're our parents," I said softly. "I didn't cut them off. They pulled the plug first. I just let go." For a moment, The only sounds were the soft hum of the heater and the faint smell of coffee left from the morning. Sophie looked around the apartment neat, quiet, so different from the messy world she came from. "You always do this," she said, her voice cracking. "When something's wrong, you just disappear. You think staying silent makes you strong, but really, it scares people." I looked at her, calm, maybe too calm. "No, Sophie. I stay silent because no one listens. And sometimes silence is the only way to make people hear what they've been ignoring." She bit her lip, eyes glistening. "I didn't think Mom meant it like that. I thought she was just emotional." I was sitting right next to her. I felt awkward too. I just didn't know what to do. I cut in, my tone steady but final. "You knew. You knew exactly what to do. You smiled, you nodded, you accepted the praise. You let me sit there like I was nothing. And when I left, you didn't call. You only came now when the system I built stopped working." Sophie swallowed her tears, whispering, "You're making this worse." I replied evenly,
No.
"I just stopped making it better while no one cared." The room went still. The afternoon light poured through the window, casting soft lines across her tired, red-rimmed eyes. For a second, I felt something like pity, but no urge to save her. I spoke slowly, as if closing a chapter. "You've always been good at being loved. Now it's time to learn how to stand on your own." Sophie took a deep breath and nodded. She didn't say another word. She picked up her bag, walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned to me, her eyes a mix of anger and realization. "Maybe you had to do this, for us to finally see." I didn't answer, just gave a small nod. The door closed behind her with a soft click. I stood there, not feeling victorious, not regretful, just still. A quiet calm spread through me, the kind that only comes when you finally stop carrying a family that never realized you were the one holding it up. A few days later, just when everything seemed to quiet down, I got a notification from the old family Facebook group, the Bennett Family Forever. I hadn't planned on opening it, but somehow my hand moved on its own, like the small, curious part of me still wanted to see what story they were telling now. The first thing I saw was a post from my mom. A photo in front of the lodge by the lake, blue sky, bright sun. Everyone smiling. Mom, Dad, Sophie, the aunts, the cousins. They stood in a long, perfect line, the kind of picture you could print on a Christmas card. Except for one small thing, I wasn't in it. Below it, the caption read, "Family is everything, even when someone forgets that." I didn't feel pain. Just a cold wave spreading from my chest up to my throat, the kind of chill you get when you walk outside in winter, without a coat. In the comments, the familiar names appeared one by one. "So true, Helen. Family is where everything begins and ends. No matter what happens, love always brings people back together." Someone added a bright red heart emoji. No one asked where I was. No one said, "This picture's missing someone." I turned off the screen and sat still for a while, listening to the wind outside the window. Then I opened my laptop again. This time, I didn't write a long post. No anger. No explanations. Just action, the one thing I've always been good at. I went into my archive folder, the one holding hundreds of PDFs, scanned receipts, and payment confirmations. Each file was a small slice of those 9 years: hospital bills, utilities, tuition, gas invoices, pharmacy receipts, bank transfers. I selected them all and arranged them in order. When the final total appeared on the screen, $148,330, I paused. Not out of surprise, but to take a deep breath. Then I uploaded them. No tags. No captions. Just one simple line beneath the post. 9 years. $148,330. No expectations. No regrets. But also no more. I hit post. Closed the laptop. Didn't refresh. Didn't wait for reactions. That afternoon, I made tea, opened the window, and let the mountain air drift in. There was a faint scent of early snow. I sat there quietly, letting silence do what it does best. By evening, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing: messages, reactions, emojis. Some apologized. Some said they had no idea. A few sent prayer hands. But my mom never wrote anything. Her post stayed exactly where it was, untouched as if nothing had changed. And maybe that was true, because the only thing that changed was me. For the first time, I told my story in the only language they'd ever understand: truth and numbers. A month after that post, the family group chat went silent. No more dinner photos. No more happy Sunday family messages. Just emptiness, cold and wide, like the ground after snow has melted. A cousin from Texas sent me a photo. The old house in Aurora now had a for sale sign out front. Under it, my dad was bent down tying his shoe. My mom stood beside him, holding a small potted plant. She was watering it, though the soil was so dry it didn't even absorb the water. I didn't reply. I didn't reach out. I knew they'd sold the house, the one I'd kept afloat for almost 10 years so the bank wouldn't take it. They sold it to start over. And maybe that's their way of learning something, too. As for Sophie, I heard she rented a small studio down in South Broadway and picked up a part-time job at a coffee shop. Every now and then, she posts photos of homemade candles. No hashtags, no fancy captions. Just quiet pictures. Maybe she's learning how to live without the spotlight. And me, I'm still in this same little apartment. Mornings, I make coffee and open the window to see the snow-capped Rockies. At night, I walk along Colfax Avenue, where the streetlights shimmer on the wet pavement like pieces of glass. No one asks who I'm helping. And for once, I don't have to prove that I'm the kind of person who does. I used to think that losing my family would leave an empty space. But the truth is, the real emptiness was being invisible while I was still among them. Now, when silence fills this room, I'm not afraid anymore. It's not loneliness, it's peace. The kind of peace that comes when you finally realize you don't owe anyone anything. I don't need their apologies.
I don't need them to change.
All I need is this morning light, a warm cup of coffee, and the quiet certainty that I stopped at the right time. If someone were to ask me, I'd tell them this. Family isn't a debt you pay month after month. It's being seen, being valued even without proof. And for anyone who's ever been erased from their own family's story, I want them to know, silence isn't defeat. Sometimes, it's the only voice strong enough to set you free.